Okay, hello everyone. So today will be another little Odin programming stream, and I will be looking at, in my game, sort of reworking how entities are defined in code and how they're made placeable within the editor. And I will show you a bit more what I mean. I will just quickly post this link to this stream on my Discord server, which you can join if you want with the link in the description of this video. So in my game, see if it is even compiled right now. Yes, I was in the middle of some stuff. So in my game, you teleport into a wall. In my game, I have an editor that I can show here. And from this you can place entities like this. You can place this cat here, or you can place a trigger and stuff. Some of these are defined from this tab. Make this a tiny bit bigger. Some of these are defined from this tab, but these are mostly like static objects and animated objects, meaning that these are objects that I have a folder where I read in some I can show that folder actually. There's this folder called, what is this in? Like that. There's this folder with just a bunch of graphics called object art, and anything that ends up in here is you can choose that. Like, so if I want to edit this entity type, then I can choose which graphics it's supposed to have down here, and I can say if it's a static object or if it's an animated object. And then I have this one, which is the waterfall, and this one is animated, so it says how many frames it has and stuff. This is just to quickly put together like little background stuff in the game. All this is sort of fine. Maybe the code for it could be a bit prettier. However, what is problematic is, and I can show those in the code. If we go here, we have entity type. Well, yeah, there's several layers to this. I made this overcomplicated, and I'm trying to kind of work around it a bit. So every entity has like an entity type handle associated with, and entity types is just this kind of struct, and there is a variant to the entity type where we have static object and animated object, and those were the two you kind of see here that you can define from in the editor. And then I have what I call built-in types, and built-in types are those that are definable from from code. Usually entities that have some kind of code behavior defined in code. Like these are the static and animated objects are just for looks in the game. They don't do much, but these sort of have code associated with them. So it can be like, you know, like the cat and the rocket, and there's lots of NPCs in here and stuff. And you can already see sort of that, okay, there's a entity type built in, it has a variant, and you have all these. And the moment you add something to this list, I can show you what I mean. Test, I can try test here and compile. You see how many compilation errors I get, because these are all the places where I must implement some code for this to work. And it's like some function to show placeholder graphics in the editor. You know, the graphics you place, like that's the placeholder graphics is when you're placing here, like the graphics that's under the cursor, how it looks in the editor, sort of. And then, you know, it's lots of things like what does this even do? Let's minimize this one now. Yeah, this is like some code that's run when you enable the entity, and here's some code that is run also when you enable the entity. Oh, maybe I click the same one. And then there's these things for getting the UID for that entity type, which is used to sort of store them, serialize references to this entity type. So you can place an entity and it refers to an entity type, then you must have a UID for that. So then I do this stuff. And what more do we have here? This create entity entity function, I think is called by the editor whenever it wants to create an entity. So you see, it is a bit of what I would like is that there's one function that creates entities based on sort of a type, and that type is entirely defined in code. It's just maybe an enum, and then there's one function that gets the placeholder graphics for the editor, so you know how it's supposed to look in the editor. Because the reason that there's a bit of difference there is that objects like the player and stuff might be animated sometimes and sometimes not. So for some objects it's good to have, like, for example, the cat here looks like this, but you know, when you're actually playing, it has lots of different animations. So you just define how it should look when you place it in the editor. That's what I mean by a placeholder. So I would like something like that. And I've gotten started on this already a bit. And I'm a believer in not doing, like, if I were to just pull out the whole old system, you know, and put something else in, then I had so much data to migrate, and it might even be hard to migrate that data. Migrate meaning that take the old data that's saved in all these levels of how the entity types are defined and stuff. So I'm a believer in trying to do things, you know, you set up a separate system next to the old one, and you do a bit of stuff in that, and then maybe over time you can migrate some stuff to that, and then suddenly you notice that, oh, I can just move everything over this one. Sort of becomes this more manageable thing to do. And I sort of think this is a good idea in general. You know, like, for example, say that you're replacing a whole system in the game, like maybe you're replacing a VFX system, or maybe you're replacing just a very central function so that it's supposed to work differently. The best idea is just to make a totally new function and or copy the old one, and so you can compare, you can switch back and forth between them instead of just deleting the old code, or, you know, starting to modify the old code, so you're in a state after a while we don't even remember how the old code worked, and you know, all that. So it's almost nicer to have usually nicer to have all the old code still working and stuff. And but anyways, that's not today's stream. I'm just closing some old stuff here. This is not today's stream. I was trying to find my, this is the one I had here. It can be over here in case anyone is wondering what I'm doing. So I've already gotten started on this a bit, and this will sort of be, I might do quite a lot of silly things here, you know, where I'm just sitting down and tinkering, essentially trying to figure out some nicer ways to do these things. Let's see here, entity kind. See, there's some activity in the chat here. There's Pavel. Hello, Pavel, in the chat is working on ECS system with that seems quite simple and to work with. That sounds nice. I don't have an ECS here. I have more of just a big entity where I try to put everything in. I can show my entity structure. So it looks like this, and then historically I've had an entity variant. So you have like the variant here, it can be like player, cat, rocket, NPC and stuff, and these hold specific things. And this is a union. For this game, I think that this has been a bit overkill. I don't have that many entities, so I'm thinking more of like trying to put as much as I can into the entity struct. Even like for some entities I don't need that stuff, it will still be there. And the reason that's sometimes nice is that then you get more of games consist of essentially entities affecting other entities. And if one entity can easily affect another one and sort of poke on variables in it, then you can get these sort of a bit more emergent behaviors. There's some games that do it like this. And yeah, so I'm just trying to actually make my entity system. It's not a system, it's just mainly, I'm just trying to migrate it to being like a struct. But what I want to try to do here is change the way I set up that struct. So my old way is to have an entity type, where this whole entity type handling is very overly complicated. There's lots of, whenever I add something to my it's just a handle. Whenever I add something to my entity type variant, the built-in entity type variant, then I get like, must fix like compilation stuff in like 6-7 places. I would like to have like, yeah, just a few. And also I want it to be easier to sort of hook these entities up to code, and I want them to be easier to create so that I can more quickly make custom code behavior for different kinds of entities. We'll see how it goes, because my problem currently, in the last stream, I wanted to make this wall you can climb. It's over here. And I have this system for making a usable thing here, and then you can define a lot of actions on it. I wonder if this works. I worry or something. Maybe I can I zoom the whole screen? That might work. So I have this. Yeah, that did what I saw now, and that it actually works. So I have this. These are the actions that this usable can do, and what this one essentially does is that I'm trying to get my bearings with zooming, that it will enable one entity, which is a trigger, and then enable a bunch of graphics entities, which is the graphics entities are these, and then the trigger is this thing, and this is all fine. This is all fine. The problem is I have no way to. I would prefer to do some of this in code, I think, and maybe have something that I can just put out in the world. I like when code is a bit more in control than just sitting in the editor and poking around. Of course, I could instead have some kind of prototype system where I can take this thing and make it into a prototype. So essentially, this is a trigger plus a few. This is a trigger plus a few 4 renderables that make this. This is white stuff plus a trigger, and I use like an interactable. What this does in the game is if I reset this and go up to it and click use, then it paints the stuff on, and then I can climb higher. I'm not sure if this is the mechanic is even gonna stay in there. I was just trying to figure out ways to give you the ability to climb higher walls. So my idea was that initially you can't climb this, you just fall down. But then you put that stuff on, and then you can climb up. And I was thinking like this is similar to sort of how you do rock climbing, you put chalk on your hands or something. But it's all a bit too far-fetched and silly, so I'm probably gonna do something simpler. But still, I would just like to try to experiment with getting this to a state where it's easier to set up or something. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. So we have currently I've made one new entity kind here, which is called rock wall. So entity kind is my new enum. So I have my old one, which is called entity type, and then I have entity kind here. And entity kind has legacy as default value, which means we use the old system, which is the entity types. I would like to call this entity type, but I'm stuck with calling entity kind. Maybe I'll rename it if I throw out the old system sometime. Who knows? So I have this. And then in my editor, I have, let's see, place entities. Place entities. This stuff I have. And here I've already started, like, so I have, you can get a list of all entity types where it gets both a list containing both the old ones, which is the entity type, and then it also gets the new ones, which is uses the entity kind stuff. Hello, Zach. And what this stuff sort of does, I'm gonna move my microphone a tiny bit. There we go. Ooh. Ooh. There we go. So this code here is mostly for drawing this stuff on the side here. This stuff. So it draws. It fetches a list of all the entity kind and all the old types, all the entity types. And the reason I do that is so I can have both systems alive at the same time. Why doesn't I think some key has gotten I was in Swedish keyboard layout, so I was like, why does nothing work? Anyways, entity kind. So I'm just trying to make it a bit simpler, all this managing of these things. Let's see here. So what this thing here does, it draws the side panel here. So it either draws, it first will be all the entity kind, which is currently only one, which is I'm trying to make this climbable wall kind of thingy. And then we have the entity type here. Yeah. Then this is the old stuff, and then it draws the textures in here. And then when this is selected, it also draws stuff in the viewport, the currently selected one, and then you can actually place this and you can remove it. And you can also place the old ones, like you can place this cat here and you can remove it and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, so let's see where I was with all this. So I made it so that I can place the entity kind stuff, which is currently only one. And when I place that, so like I said, this is going to be a sort of a tinkering stream. So we'll see. Maybe I'll sit here and mumble and program and get confused sometimes. So entity kind is rock wall. What do we want from the rock wall? So I have this new function will be my new function to create entities from an entity kind. And the nice thing about this function is that I can run it from within the serializer. So when I deserialize an entity, which is, this code is run both for serializing and deserializing, but when I deserialize it, then it first reads out the kind, and if it's reading from disk, then it also makes sure to run this function, so it can do like the initialization of the entity based on how my code wants the entity to look, because I want code to be as in charge as much as possible, but then it's important that if this entity kind has some state it wants to set up, so for example this rock wall, it wants there to be one what this thing does is it creates an entity with one renderable set on it, where that one just has a texture of a rock wall. So whenever you deserialize from disk, it will first check the kind, and then it will set the the default state based on the kind using this function, and then it will go on to deserialize all the other stuff on it that comes from the editor, like which layer are you on, which position do you have, all that will get put in. which is like the correct order, because this function call here, will overwrite the whole entity, but nothing has been written into it yet. I just realized, yeah, oh good, it sets the entity kind down here. I was like, it will deserialize entity kind here, but then it writes over the whole entity here, but actually it's reset in there, so it's fine. So that's already something I didn't have in the old system. The old system was like, it deserializes the entity variant straight up here, and then it has to afterwards, after it's completely done, it has to go and patch up, sort of. There's like this enable entity crazy. So sort of here is like the player cat, so it's loads the idle animation, sets up all the animations, sets the default animation. But this is done after the serializer has done stuff. I would like it knows it's supposed to be the player character, so it runs the entity from entity kind, and then that one is already in the correct default state, and then it can deserialize on top of that, put in like the extra stuff that has changed inside the editor or whatever. But that should never I never want this state over here to this code over here to kind of mess up the stuff that was deserialized. So therefore I also have these ugly things where I don't use the when I run this function, create entity from entity kind, then I can just return a whole entity. I don't care what data is on there already. I just return an entity for the rock wall with one renderable, and then it can afterwards set stuff up. But in this case, I get this ugly code where I can't just reset the whole entity, because there will already be stuff on there that I shouldn't touch. So I just like poke into it. I was like, okay, on the variant, set the walk animation like this, and blah blah blah, and yeah, it's a bit messy. Hello Lucy. The cat game is fine. I am trying to rework my entity stuff a bit, but the game is fine, as you see. You can run around there, and I have my fancy inventory down here that I've been setting up, and yeah, I think it's just a bit of many things at once currently, with things to refactor and ideas for gameplay and stuff. And there the game crashed. Why? I put in this says panic. Check if inventory has onion and start dialogue with squirrel. I put in that panic yesterday because I'm supposed to implement a thing that I haven't, and I didn't think it would panic on me like that. Yeah, yeah, I will remove that for now. Oops. What's this? Oh, yeah, I have my entity type built in. Remove that one. We removed that one. I thought it was a legit crash first. I was like, oh, the game crashed? That's new. And I think the nicest thing I've done recently with the game is that I reworked all the physics stuff, so can no longer fall through the ground. I've never had any problems with sort of falling through the ground. I can even teleport myself into the ground, and it just gets stuck there. Before it would just fly to hell, which is, I mean, this is more stable than it just like getting pushed away and just disappearing. But anyways, if I don't teleport myself into the ground, I will never fall through it and stuff. So that's all good. And the collision code is actually simpler now, thanks to some people in the Odin Discord that helped me a bit. There's still some physics stuff, like you can see sometimes you climb the wall with there's like a few pixels in between you, but yeah, I will fix that someday, glue it to the wall a bit better. Anyways, I keep sidetracking myself. So we have the rock wall now. That's good. Can we go over here maybe? Let's remove this guy and maybe remove these ones as well. Then remove that. And then we place in the new entity we have, which I think I can walk straight through. It has no this one has no collision, no nothing on it, but that's up to me to sort of put in. So maybe let's try adding collision to this. So I want to move more towards a mega struct where my entity can contain sort of anything, and it's just nicely works. So let's go to the entity, and you're gonna think that this entity looks very big, but it's I'm not gonna have that many entities in the game, so it will probably be fine, and it will make the game easier and the gameplay code slightly more fun to write, and sort of you can also make it a bit more emergent. I don't know if I need that much emergent gameplay, but lots of ideas for how to organize your entities is usually over-engineered stuff because your game didn't actually need it, but you were like, oh, I need this giant system for managing entities, even though you just do a few specific things in all your entities. And if you don't do specific things sometimes, then you can do that from, you can have some code attached with it or like related to it. Okay, do I have a collider on here? No. Okay, so currently the entity variants, some of the entity variants like static object can have a collider. Let's go back to entity and be like this. We're just gonna add the collider at the bottom here. I should probably maybe try to organize these someday so they're like, they are a bit more organized of like, there's a bunch of things in here essentially. So we have the collider there. Then we get this funny problem that the there's already a struct that, because I have this thing called an entity instance that uses the using keyword on both the entity and the variant to kind of make this object that where you can access anything on the entity or the variant and just do stuff on both. The only problem with this thing is that you can't have name conflicts, because if you have one collider on, say, the static object has a collider, and then your main entity also has a thing called a collider, then the compiler will go like this. Although it's a bit confused here because it doesn't say which type it actually was. Yeah, but anyways, I need to remove these. And I will get some other compilation error, I think. Yeah, it's like, now it's like, this one doesn't have a collider because it's setting it on a variant, but I move it to the entity on the animated object as well. And then let's see here, if not rect is empty, collider. Let's see here. Okay. This is the thing that sets up the collider, and it also adds grab points. Grab points are grab points are these green things. That's where the cat can do this. Yeah. So it will set up grab points automatically for static objects. Alright, what should we... I can fetch the... Maybe let's just get it compiling. We change it to use the collider from the entity. Yeah. Same for you, Mr. Animated Object. And there it compiled again. This looks a bit sad now. Let's... I don't want to be in this cave anymore, I feel like. I want to be out in the... pretty world. Because I want some other objects around. What other object has a collider? Let's place this. We have somewhere we have this guy to the front layer. We place this here. How the hell does that look? Yeah, we place that there. That one has a collider, and then we also place the new cat at like layer 5. Place it here, save, reset. Now we're over here, and this is a static object with a collider. So now I know that that code worked. I also want to place my new fancy thing here. I'm just gonna place this wall here so I can climb on something. Or did that one? Yeah, good. It ended up on the 5th, on the 0th layer. I have some Z fighting here. I've been annoyed at this for a long time. I'm gonna try to fix it. This one is at -1. This one is at, oh no, it's the bush here is at -5. This one should be at -6 in that case. Now they won't fight anymore. Okay, that's good. Now I would like, so this function creates my entity. Now it would be nice if I can say, okay, I want a collider on this one. Oh, I wonder if I can make a nice collider somehow that takes the whole size from the texture, like a nice default. Then I must fetch the texture to get the size. Maybe that should have a, that happens quite often. Maybe I should have a function to fetch a texture and look at the size of it. Because quite often I just fetch a texture to just look at the size. So I have texture handles, which is just an integer with a generation and stuff to so that I to represent textures out in the wild. I also have texture names, which is sort of an enum from our textures, because I generate a big I generate this file with all the texture names in here, and I generate this based on which textures are used on disk. So this is actually a generated Odin file. It runs just a little pre-generator that runs before anything happens. And yeah, so it would be cool if, let's go to asset storage.odin, scroll down here, let's just add that maybe. I don't know if that's a good idea, but get text, maybe it's nah, it's not very useful. Sometimes you just have to do the thing you should do. Text is this, and then well, that's the texture handle, and then we say get texture th, and then here we can say th, and here we say, this is just a rect, so we say it should be at x0, y0. So I want to try to make a collider for this whole thing. And I've never done this in this way before. Like, I just want to put a collider on any entity, and if that collider is set, then that entity will get the collider in the game, which is sort of, again, more moving towards having this big entity where I can just put anything on it, and then when that entity gets comes alive within the game world, it's sort of like, it's like, oh, you have a collider, let's take care of that for you and stuff. Yeah, I think there's a rect from size. Yeah, this is what I want actually. Yeah, what happened? Where am I? You know what I need to do? I need to do the cleansing. I need to close all files. Yes, except this one. This is my what the hell am I doing file. And I close. Can I do this? Okay, I want to close all files. I want to close all files in this, on the left side. This one I want to keep, but it's not saved, but I don't care about that. It's like, no, not possible. It was trying to save this one. Close other, okay, I can do like that. Yeah, okay, and then I go to back to my game file. Okay, what was I doing? Oh yeah, create, no, entity from kind. So I want to do it like this. Actually, this is a Raylib texture. I can do this. Texture size. I don't think I have. Oh, I have. Nice. Like that. Then I just get a collider. That's my size. This still won't work because it doesn't use the collider yet. But then we can go to enable entity. Yeah, and this function. Let's see, is this the function we want to use? So in create world, this is create world. Create world takes a serialized state, and then a serialized state is just a lot of JSON data. And then it sort of runs my own serializer to bring it into the correct runtime format. For example, it will the stuff I showed before. For example, it will create entities by eventually reaching this function where it does all this stuff, and it will also create the entity from the correct kind here. So let's see. So it has deserialized everything. It adds all the entities. This code I don't like, but maybe I can automate all this. So what this does, the reason this code is here is like anytime there's an asset, there's an entity reference, it needs to take an ID and check, okay, an entity with this ID has probably been deserialized. But which entity handle in the runtime does it actually have? Because the ID is only used for serialization. And then it does all these manually. But while I'm doing the serialization, I could record all the entity references. And then it can at the end have a list of all those and just go through and just fix them all. Because it must have been done with the whole deserialization to be able to do this. Because otherwise they might miss entities that come after the one that's currently being deserialized. So that's why all this is here. And like see, as you see, it's not. It has just. I just added more. In the beginning, there was like 2 things in here, but never mind that one. Okay, this creates the world. This one does not enable the world. So in load level, we have create world, and then it runs enable world. Right. Enable world does all kinds of funny things. So it will go through all the tiles and set up the colliders for them, and then it will add all the grab points on all the colliders, and then it will finally go through all entities and enable all entities. And then we delete the white space that is there. And then this function that I don't like is called. A lot of the stuff that's in this function will be removed. Stuff that maybe I do like to be in this function is stuff that reacts on. Let me show here entity. Maybe say that there is a non-zero collider here. Then this function can look at that and be like, oh, we should add a collider to the world, because when it checks collision, it checks against a list of static colliders. It does not go and look at all entities and check if like, oh, do you have a collider? Maybe it could do that, I don't know, but currently there's a separate collider list. So this is a good moment to do that. So what we can do here now is enable entity. Yeah. So here, this is my function. This is my own implementation of a handle-based array, which means it stores a big list of all the entities, and it has an entity handle, and the handle is essentially just an index, so like the textures. And this makes it so that you don't have to give up pointers, and you don't get dangling pointers. You just have an index, and it's dirt cheap to look it up. And it also has a generation, like a generation counter inside the handle to make sure that it doesn't accidentally use thinking entities. Okay, well, that slot has actually been removed and it's already reused. But yeah. So what we'll do here now in enable entity, we will do like more generic things, like if is rect empty, I think it's called rect empty. Rect is empty. So if not rect is empty, e.collider. Right, this one. Then, like currently we have code down here that does the, I think somewhere down here. Oh, all this code. Yeah, does this stuff. Now we can do this in for a generic case. Anything can have a collider. And we just, is that an entity enabled? Oh, then it gets added as a collider. And this thing, one important thing is the collider is the coordinates on it is local space, so it just pushes on the position of the entity to it, and then it sets up a collider. Let's see if that works. We go here. The collider seems to be this is it has ended up in the origin. The origin is here. Okay, I see. I think I see what's going on here. Doesn't this happen in other cases? So it's for static for these guys. It's a bit interesting. That's a bit interesting. Why does it... Did it get the offset from the origin for that one, but not for like animated objects and stuff? Let's go look at how it's drawn in the world. Draw world. Oh, I cleaned up my draw world function so much. I couldn't sleep the other night, and I was like just sitting in the kitchen, I was still in bed when I was like, oh, I could actually do the rendering much more simply, because before it kind of in draw world it sort of switched over all the variants of all the entities and sort of built a list of what to draw, like different renderables and stuff. But as I said, I want to move more to an entity, like a mega struct entity. So I added so each entity can have up to four renderables here, and for a static object it just sets it to just have one at the start, and then it never touches it. For an animated object, this is updated each time it changes frame, and then the only thing now, this is and I've fixed all the different entity types, so they no longer, they all in their update functions, they now sort of set the renderable to the correct type. So for example, for the player cat, now update cat update here, this is my old physics code. It's commented out for, because there's a few things I still need to fix. But down, this is for the cat. It just says, each frame, it just says you have one renderable, and your renderable is this texture here, and your animation rect is whatever the animation, the rectangle you should draw in this texture, which is a sprite sheet with frames. it's this one. So then the only thing it needs to do, my draw world stuff now, is it needs to use it, go over all the entities and take the renderables and put them on a list and make sure then it sorts them based on the layer, because you can put things behind stuff and stuff. And so this, instead of this giant switch with all the types, it just does this now. And yeah. And the reason some objects have multiple, like the rocket has several renderables on on itself. Yeah. One thing I don't love about this is that I build a list of all renderables and then sort it and draw it. It's not a problem for me really, but in an ideal world, maybe I would have used, a renderer that had sort of, because I put things behind things, I have layers. Maybe in an ideal world, I would have used sort of more a 3D approach where the layer actually sets the Z value or whatever. If you have the Z axis inwards on the screen, then a higher Z value means a layer further away, and then I could just use the depth buffer to sort my stuff, and I use an orthogonal camera. But now I'm using the standard 2D stuff, which draws it in this way. But if I redid stuff, like, I'm not gonna redo that, but if I, in a future 2D game, maybe I would actually use it to draw it in 3D with using the depth buffer to sort things through layers, because then you can just like build a command list with objects and put the depth correctly and just throw it on there, and it would just get sorted out over time as it draws the stuff. Yeah, anyways. So that's my change that into the rendering stuff. Okay, so now we're wondering why is so this one is here and the collider port is down here, and it's not weird because 0 is here, and for this one I'm thinking of a couple of different things. If I even want the origin in the middle like this, or if I want it up in the corner. Because now this one is here. So I need to move it back to here. Yeah, like I said, this will be a lot of tinkering and just there's lots of some days when you're doing a stream or you're doing a video, you know exactly what you're doing and blam blam blam. But today is more like, this is what programmers tend to do a lot of the time, just like changing things a bit back and forth until you find something that works nicely. Sometimes I work a whole day and then at the end of the day I just throw everything I did away because I'm like, no, and I actually need to do it like this, and then like that I'm gonna do tomorrow. Then I just throw it all away. That tends to happen. But anyways, I'm trying to figure out the placement of this thing here, because the origin ends up in the middle here. Which is maybe fine. I like that, especially for the player character, to have the origin in the middle. It just makes everything simpler to be like the graphics and the colliders are spreading out from your center. Sometimes I like having origin also at the middle of the feet. It varies. It varies. Let's see. Enable entity. So what I could do here is like minus minus width. Like I can figure out the width of it and do that, but is the problem maybe this? That in create entity, I call entity from kind, is the problem maybe that we should take out the size like this, and then we say rect from position and size, and then we say minus size times a half, and then we say size, so that is like it got offset by half the size. So it's I think that's the correct thing. If you want your origin in the middle, then the local position for your collider should be, you know, half the distance, half yeah, then that works. I think that's how it's supposed to be. You see, stuff like that is easy to get wrong. Maybe instead of fixing the local position on the collider, which is the correct thing, maybe you'd be like, oh, maybe my rendering position is wrong, or maybe maybe I need to fix the collider afterwards when I put it in. Like, you know, maybe you start doing it here when you're enabling the entity to kind of, maybe I fetch the texture and start changing it. But actually the solution was to do it over here. And knowing sort of where these things are supposed to be, like where the best place to do it in the code, that's, I think, is quite often one of the trickier things about programming. But the hardest thing about it is also to when you've done some work and you realize, oh, it should be like done like this instead, like listen to that internal voice and actually try that, because some people be like, no, I'm so far into what I'm already doing, so they want to backtrack, and they just continue building on this weird castle of eternal doom. So it's knowing when to backtrack a bit is good. This was just a tiny thing, but you know, it can snowball, those kind of things, and you just have these weird setups everywhere. Okay, that's cool. So this is already like a ton simpler than my old stuff. That I can just say this, it should look like this, it has a collider like this, and the game just like picks it up and puts it there. Okay, so now this one does those things correctly. Now one thing here is that it doesn't get the climb. You see, this one has green circle here, and those points are for making it so that you can climb up on that thing like this. Yeah, but I was teleporting around. Yeah, so maybe it would be nice to be able to tell it that, oh, this collider should have that. Not all colliders should have that. Like, yeah, this one has that. Interesting. Yeah, okay. But I think it's not, you don't always want it. So we will go here, and maybe I'm thinking either I predefine grab points, or I tell it that it should generate grab points from the collider. I'm gonna try the generate path for generate grab points. There's a bool, because this thing does that down here. What is this thing doing? Okay, that one is comparing against all the colliders if I'm not gonna do that. So I have some old code here that sets up static objects, and if they have a collider it adds the grab points to it, but it checks so that there's nothing nothing else next to you. I will show you what happens, because we will add this stuff over here, and then we can remove these things, right? So what this will do is it will get pause from I think I have a nice function for this. Upper left, no, rect. Oh, left, top left, rect top left. And I think rect top left just takes the position. Yeah. So the first grab point is everything got weirder because I changed the layout of the struct. So then it the game gets sad when it hot reloads and everything is moved in memory, but it didn't crash, which is so when you add stuff to your entity struct like this while playing the game, stuff can happen. So the P1 is supposed to be this, the grab point. If we look at this is a P1 and P2 is sort of this one on the right. So rect top left, and then we have rect top right. See, so now we don't need to do this where we add the width, and then let's see. Then it adds the grab point. It's a compatible facing, which facing the catched face direction, the catched face. And see, now it has added the green things here. I don't think I can reach those because I can't climb that high, but they're there. I could can test it by lowering this thing, and then whoop, and it climbs up. Whoop, yeah, that's good. Okay, so it does grab points. Now to illustrate what this collision check was for, if I take a block and place it there, and we look at this still has grab points. We shouldn't have a grab point. This grab point is first of all not useful, and it could also cause bugs where it is trying to, it shouldn't, I don't think it should cause bugs. Yeah, because there are checks that you can't go down into a grab if you would end up inside the ground. So it actually works, but I don't like those that much. But the nice thing is, before enable entities run, all the tiles in the world will already have been processed. So I could do a check here where I could do a check so that it doesn't try to generate this one if there's a block here. But you know what? I'm gonna skip doing that for now because I'm not sure that it even matters. We can do like this. Do we need this? Because it does a collision check against all the tiles. It is only done once during import. That's fine. But yeah. Append. Just a note from myself. Alright. So that works. That's fun. Okay. So did you know in the beginning of this I said that a good thing is to keep your old stuff around so you can compare it to the new stuff, and I talked a lot about code, but one thing I did in the beginning of this stream is that I removed my old climby thing over here, so now I can no longer show that because I removed it, which was a bad idea. I don't know why I didn't just put another one up here and then I can compare. This is the old one that I used, my old stuff I built yesterday. I love this Z fighting here because all these tiles are on layer 0 And this trigger here is in layer 0. No, it's in layer 2. Okay, the rendering is bugged. It doesn't care about layers when it draws the triggers. But yeah, it looks a bit funny when it's inside the ground. Things shaking. Okay. So that's fun. But the stuff I had over there was essentially some gameplay code where you could interact with this thing, and when you interacted with it, you could put flour on it, and then you could climb up. Like I said, I'm not sure I'm gonna keep that gameplay, because my thought was that, oh, you already have flour, and I want to have something where that can make you climb higher. And it was kind of cute because you're already going on this quest to collect pancake recipe ingredients. So I thought that maybe you can use it as sort of like, when you go bouldering or something, you have chalk on your hands. But it's a bit far-fetched and hard to understand. But I could teach the player to do it, of course. We'll see if I keep it. But I'm just going to experiment it like this. So now, since I'm controlling things more from code, instead of doing the stuff that I just did with putting out the old stuff, had a usable entity here. With the old stuff, I would be like, okay, let's put out a usable here, and let's go on this one and add lots of properties on it, and blah blah blah, which is fine, but it's not my favorite kind of workflow to do too much in the editor like that. I prefer defining things on code. And especially if you work with other designers and stuff, then you should have your editor be able to do more stuff like that. But if your programmer designer does things alone and you like doing things in code, then do that. It's fine. So what we'll do here is on the entity, we already have a use item handler. And the use item handler is an enum. And this enum has a default item handler and then a flower tree item handler. And this is essentially just what this thing does is essentially it reroutes these names to use item handler proc. So it has like a couple of different procedures. So it can either be like here I have the different use item handlers. So it can be like the default one goes to the default item handler, flower tree goes to flower tree item handler. I could of course store a function pointer instead in the entity struct. One little trouble with that is hot reload, because when you hot reload, your function pointers get messed up. Because if you store, because the code is gone, but the data stays. But then you have data in your code. You have code pointed out by your data that is in the old DLL that got removed. There are ways to get around that. You can go over your stuff and patch it up, sort of. Which is maybe I could do somehow. But yeah, I'm just using an indirection thing, ding-a-ding, here for now. So this one has a use. The entity has a use item handler. Let's try to see if we can get that one to work with anything. So we go to enable entity, and let's see here, the use item handler. Okay, so this thing, this is for the NPCs. This is handled here. That's interesting. But if we go then to update game play mode update, down here it loops over all the entities, and then there was a lot of code. Oh, this is my dialogue system. Down here we loop through the entities, and here is the NPC stuff, and then it does some stuff. Where is the use item handler stuff? Oh, here we go. Okay. Interactable in range. So this stuff, interactable in range, it sets the nearest thing that you can interact with. That's like an entity handle. Next interactable in range. Okay. I see. This one is set. This one is set in a couple of different cases. I think I can make a quite interesting generic solution here based on that the entity has all the things. So you see, when the entity has lots of things on it directly, you can do all these generic solutions that just make suddenly all entities can have just put an enum value. You just change an enum value on the entity, and then like suddenly stuff starts working. Let's see. So here is my loop in my update loop over all the entities. And here I switch over the variant, and here it does all the funny stuff. So what if I'm just gonna do something crazy here? Is closer controlled entity. Okay, so it checks, is this entity I'm currently looking at, is that closer to the control entity, which is the player, than the one that is already closest, and then it has a max interaction distance. So let's try that. Yeah. Oh, I think you're now seeing yourself. Let's just do this for now. Just experimenting a bit. If gmem.controlled entity, if the entity we're currently looking at is not the, so we do this for all entities except the cat. And this is now you see this now. This is what I mean. Now suddenly very interesting and funny thing starts happening here. The cat is now walking around trying to talk to everything in the world. And some of the things, like here's a tree, you can talk to that, and it's like, it's a very annoying tree. Now you can try to talk to a to a bush. I'm not saying I want to keep it like this, but it's quite a funny side effect, and it's in this case it's not something I want, but you could easily add lots of interesting stuff like this that make your game a bit more emergent. So yeah, I can talk to that. Maybe I'm gonna do something very stupid here. I think I'm gonna go to the default item handler. Here is the entity you're trying to talk to. Wait, default no, this is the item handler. Yeah. When does it say I can't talk? Okay, it's this one. Okay, so there's something called an examine text right now, which is what the cat says when it looks at it. Maybe I also want a name. Let's try this. The name on it. Oh, whoa. There is another name somewhere. I don't. This compilation error is not very helpful. It's just like, oh, it's in one of the variants, and I'm like, okay, which? The spline. The spline has a name. We're gonna call it the display name. That's what all programmers do when they already use name for something. They're like, no, this is the display name. It's used for pretty things. No, I know that's not what it's used for, but sometimes it's almost like that. because you already had a name in the code that's like, oh, it's just kind of ID, and then you want to actually have a real name that's used for displaying it somewhere, and then it's like, no, that's the create entity from kind. I wonder if we go to, this can be quite funny, if we go to enable, I'm just trying to do a very silly thing here where you can say that you just go up to things and you can just say, it just will say hello and the name of that thing. This is just me being silly now. Where is the like static objects? Yeah, they have a texture. Yeah, in the chat, Peter Alabaster says, so you need a way to differentiate something if it's just an entity and something you intend users to try to talk to interact with. Yes, and the easy way to do that is just to have on the entity, we have the use item handler. The default one on here should be maybe, no, that's not the use item handler, wait. Because that's used for using items with it. The other thing is when it's trying to interact with it. Yeah, I need some way, but it could probably just be something on the entity that says that, okay, with this one you can talk, you can use it, you can use, this is how it interacts with items and stuff. And then, you know, string more and more. Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's interactable bool on there, something like that. It's quite funny to do things like this because it's essentially the silliest first idea you have might be what works. But you see, this entity is starting to get quite big. Yeah, but I don't have a ton of these in the game. There's like some of the trees in the background and the player character, and some of the NPCs are trees. It's not a million of them. It already has an interactable bool. You are correct. Yeah, the funny thing. Thank you. That one comes from the old interaction system, where I just threw this on the main entity, and it's only the old interaction system that uses this one right now. But I can just use that one for this as well. Because also it's good because then it will be false for everything, and yeah, it's funny how I missed that because it was I haven't made it recently. Did my game just like go and crash somewhere or something? Index is out of range. Okay. What index? Anyways, so what I was gonna do here is I was gonna do something silly. Like in enable entity, we have enable entity. We have static object. This one has a texture. Nah, okay, now there's no point to doing it like this. Things will need a proper name. If they have a proper display name, then I show that. Yeah, I was just being silly. I was thinking if I could generate a name, but I realized the texture names are too crude. I can't talk to that. Okay, if len of display name is bigger than 0, and it says say single line. I do write this out here, and then I say fmt dot temporary print hello, and then it does a string, and then it says the display name. It's too far up. can't talk to it. I wanted to talk to my rock face. I can't talk to that. Why not? Create from... I don't think I'm not setting the name. Ay, forgot the comma. Hello, slippery rock wall. How you doing? That's silly. But yeah, I won't be able to make it for all these because they don't have any good names currently. Right. Now, that was not what I was gonna do. I was gonna go to enable entity. So currently, no, not enable entity, but play mode update. Next. What's it called? This is the dialogue stuff. I should move that to a separate file, separate function at least. Yeah. If e.interactable, now that all those will go away. Now I can go back to entity from entity kind and say interactable equals true. Then I reset because it, and now this, hello slippery rock wall. How are you doing today? And then I can try to, it tries to pick it up, it can't pick it up. And I try to use the flower with it. I can't do that. But in this case, that's exactly what I want to do. So now I can do now it says it doesn't need flower. Now I can use item handler equals dot rock wall. Use item handler rock wall. Then we go, where is it? Dot rock wall equals rock wall item. Hello DGI in London. Who has a question that maybe somebody knows? Oh, it's a random one. Shoot. So this is the function rockwall item handler. When I'm disable the function that is run whenever I try to interact with the rockwall using any item. And if the item is not flower, then I run the default item handler. So all this stuff will happen. But otherwise, I will do something interesting here. Maybe, yeah, affect this entity somehow. So already these things are, I feel a lot better about this than my old system for doing stuff. So it feels quite good. I can try doing here. Is this one say single line? What happened? It's like, oh. Yeah, it's Sublime sometimes. It's like, no, I'm just gonna open 2 files of the same for you. Use item. Yeah, I read your question, DJI in London. Sorry, I have no idea what any of that is. Maybe someone in the chat does. Use item handler. What? Rock wall. Oh, okay. It's just called an item handler, not a user. I was like trying to find it. So what I was doing here was I was looking at say single line. Entity handle. Which is the entity? Okay, yeah, I will do like this. gmem.controlled entity. Hi. So now you see that it ran my correct. So I try to do this, it can pick it up. But if I try to use this one, wait, I need to reset the game. Yeah, now it says hi. So that means this code was run when I tried to interact with it, and then for anything that isn't this item, because I can have multiple items here, it will run the default one, but now it will run this. Oh, thank you, DJI in London. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, so now the old one I had over there. You can go back to the start replay of this if you're watching this later of this stream. I showed how it worked. The old one had sort of, when you use the flower with it, it appeared like some white flower on it, and then it also spawned that it enabled a trigger. So whenever you're inside a trigger, you can climb a bit higher, because currently I can't get that high, and that's the whole idea of this. But I want to do this a bit more in code, so I feel like I'm a bit more comfy with the whole thing than sitting in the editor and just doing silly things. Yeah. So how to start with that? There's a few different problems here I have. I should only be able to do this once. So I need to kind of state flag on the entity that I can set, like, oh, this has happened. Something. Okay, in this case, that doesn't actually matter if you do it multiple times, but the other thing is that I need to modify the entity a bit so it starts displaying more things. And that I can quite easily do. Let me try that. So currently the rock wall has we're looking create entity from kind. I always try to find create entity from entity kind, but it's just entity from entity. Names. This one already has one renderable. Okay. So what if I just do this? What if I say no, the entity now has two renderables, and e.renderables, the second one is as a texture, and I say get texture by name, and then I say, what's that one called? I have to look on disk. It's here somewhere, I think. Or is it? Yeah. It's not that one. Where did I put it? It's called chalk floor. Chalk floor. Yeah. So if we do that, this will probably already probably like that. Cannot to handle the texture handled by name. No, okay. Okay, it's just supposed to be get texture handled. I don't even know my own code anymore. Oh. Okay, we try to pick it up, doesn't work. Then we take out the chalk, we put it, and it didn't work. So sad. It might be that it's rendering, but it's behind. I think that's the case. I need on the renderables I need yeah, like this. Entity renderable. This thing needs a layer, a relative layer or something. So you can say that, oh, it's 1. That means it's 1 in front of whatever layer this one, the rest of the stuff on this one has. Peter is asking how long you've been working on this project, or how long have I been working on this project. It's a bit hard to tell. In May, I was on a plane home from GDC, and I was just trying out Odin and Raylib on the plane. You know, passing time, sort of. So I made a silly little walk cycle with the cat, and it could move back and forth on the screen. And I put some pixel art in Sprite on the plane. Just did very silly things. And then I just had that little tiny project. And then I just over time like, oh, I think I showed this before, but I have it on my Discord server here somewhere. This is the oldest gameplay I still have of my game. So this is probably in May or June or something. But I was just doing this a bit in the weekends back then. But since September or something, I've been working on this every day. Yeah, I think middle of September, maybe. Or was it middle of August? I don't know. Sometimes it's been going quite fast. So essentially I've been working a few months on it full time. It's been going quite fast sometimes. Sometimes I gotten stuck in swamps of just like thinking too much and rebuilding stuff and whatever. Speed is very much going up and down. I think I have this problem where sometimes when I work in teams with people, I can go and use them as rubber ducks and sort of pick up the ball again. But when I work totally alone, I get a bit sometimes that I get a bit stuck in doing something in a bad way, and there's no one there to tell me like, hey, stop that. So one reason I actually do a bit more streams these days is not that I always think that I have sometimes, you know, I have something very fun like, oh, I'm gonna stream about this, or I'm gonna make a video off stream about this. But sometimes I just use the stream as sort of a rubber duck, even though there's no one commenting. I just probably explain a bit what I'm doing. This is sort of using people on the internet as my rubber ducks to talk to. But then I've noticed now that people actually watch, and they ask very nice questions, so it's more than rubber ducks. That's perfect. That's perfect. And now we have a relative. No, not here, but on the renderable. Num rend, and my goal is to try to ship some kind of short game in January or something. So right now I'm just trying to get everything working like I can, like I want to, and then I will try to... I already have more levels after this one, but I've got gone back to this first level and trying to rework some stuff. Yeah, maybe I should... Peter says that he just talks to himself when he gets stuck. Maybe I should start talking to this one when I get stuck. It can be like, here's the microphone, say something. Oh, okay. Be like that then. Hello, GHJHJK. Sorry. That wasn't the easiest. So now I can say on this one I can say relative layer equals 1. And then I need to use this, of course. Draw world, blah, 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 blah. On the renderable, the layer is entity.layer plus the r.relative layer. That should move things forward. Hello, slippery rock wall. Okay, hello, hello. Ah, yes, you see, it worked. So put that thing there. Now I just need to... I think I'm just going to make that texture bigger so I can just... You could put there. So what our thing did now is that it... it extended the number of renderables to 2 and set that one to that one. Which works alright for my purposes. Where is... Here's the rock wall. Let's take this stuff, put a new layer. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do like this. Load the default palette, and then I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna go... Oh! Hey, Sprite is having a bad day. Oh, the layer, that layer is empty. But that's sort of what I want. Okay, I'm gonna copy this up to here. And remove that layer. Then we're gonna take this color and swap it for that one. We're gonna go in and... I thought I was gonna erase, but I'm not allowed anymore. Why? Ah, I replaced color in all layers. Okay. I don't think that's the layer setting, but let's try. Oh, it was. Now I can remove this crap, or I can actually like filling with empty stuff. And then this layer, I can remove that, and then I can go in here and remove that. So there we go. Now we have that one, and we have this separately. And now we just call this one rock wall chalk. Like that. Rock wall chalk. Okay, let's try this. We go up with this, put that, and there you go. And now the only thing left is to somehow make it so that I can climb higher when I'm near this one. So somehow previously I used a trigger. I spawned a trigger that was like, as long as you're inside that trigger. I even had a trigger name left. Thank you, Peter. Have a nice day or night. I have a climb high volume, which is my old trigger that was, whenever you were inside that, then it put it there. I wonder if that is the simplest solution, to have a volume you're inside, in which things just modifies the gameplay a bit. The other way, which we can look at, is, what is it called? You do like a wall slide. No, you don't. You do climbing. So you're in the climbing state. Here is the stuff that uses the in climb high trigger. Then it checks if the player is in the climb high volume. So that's all there. I was just thinking, do I have any information about this entity I'm climbing on? No, I don't. And it would be tricky to do that, because sometimes I climb on tiles and sometimes I climb on entities, and so with that in mind, I'm gonna try to spawn the volume. I will try to spawn the volume. Use, I want to rename these things. Let's see here. Rock wall item handler. So this should be the rock wall use item handler. And maybe it should even be, I think usually I find things easier if I can write use rock wall in the thingy. So this one will be use item handler flower tree. So it's that one, and then this is the default item handler. Use item handler default. Huh? It's just made gibberish with my multi-selection. Rock Wallu L item handler. What is this? When did that happen? Oh, I see what happened. I still had the chat is asking if the game is available on the web. Not currently. I'm gonna try to finish it maybe until in January or something, and I will probably initially put it on itch.io or something, so people can buy it for a cheap coin or something. One unusual thing I'm thinking of doing, since Odin is a new programming language and some people might be interested in that part a bit, like I'm not saying the average gamer will be, but some enthusiasts. So I was thinking of maybe shipping the game with the full sort of source of the game, which is an unusual move, but I think sometimes people don't like doing that because either they're afraid of getting sued for some software patent, or they are afraid of like, oh, maybe I want to put it on another platform, and then some porting company just took that code and just ported it themselves and put up in some other country they put up on the phone, and I didn't have it on the phone. But for this game I'm mostly trying to just release it on PC, and I don't even have any plans to put it on anything else. So it would be quite fun, I think, to ship it with the full source of the game, just so people as a sort of unique selling point also, like, oh, you can see how it was made, and I don't really care, like, as long as they don't put some license that you can't just take the source code and resell it, or you can't just modify the source code into a slightly new game and resell it or something. But you can use it for your personal, like, whatever. And it's not gonna, like, I can be honest, like, it's not gonna be maybe the prettiest source code ever, because I do things a bit strangely sometimes, and also because I come more from engine programming and gameplay programming. I'm still trying to find a good balance in, like, because gameplay programming is by nature a bit more hacky than engine programming, because you have entities that need to interact with each other all the time, and it's a bit there is an inherent hackiness to gameplay code that needs to be there. That if you have enough of that, then the game actually becomes more fun. If you have, like, super strict, like, oh, I'm a very strict programmer that's gonna, make all the code perfectly beautiful, then usually the gameplay will suffer, because you're like, oh, I don't want to implement all these corner cases because it will make the code less pretty. But yeah, so with gameplay code you usually have to be a bit more anything goes, as long as it's not buggy and it's sort of maintainable. You still have to have a bit more funny corner cases, which is something I'm not used to that much. So the code might be a bit messy or a bit unusual, but that's fine. Okay, I had a texture on it. Oh, I was gonna do a trigger. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night. I mean, not. I was telling the chat. Not. I'm not going yet. So that would be a fun way to end. Like, suddenly you just say, you're sitting doing, say, thank you, have a good night, and you shut it off. No, immediately. Okay, we need to put a trigger here somehow. So it needs to add a new entity with a trigger. Let's see. The world has a bunch of triggers like this. Here's a list of all my triggers. I have so much better ideas for how to do this. Since I already loop over all the entities each frame, I could just check. Oh, are you a trigger? Is the player inside this one? And then it has a list it maintains. This is all the triggers the player is in this frame. Instead of having this extra stuff. But let's do it in separate steps. First, we just add a normal trigger. Enable entity. When you enable a trigger currently, now the window got then it's appended to the list of triggers, which is reasonable. Now we have two. I don't know how this happens in Sublime. I just program, and over time it will just sometimes open an extra file. So now I have two files of the same again. I have no idea how that happens. Add entity world climb high trigger. Okay. Yeah, this is all the old stuff. This create entity is part of the old stuff here. I hate all this stuff. It's so overcomp. I'm making now. Just currently I only have the rock wall in there, but I think the player can use this new entity kind system. For those who haven't watched from the beginning, I making this new enum here that's just like legacy is the old system, but then we'll add these different types or kinds of entities here. And yeah, and this will just be defined in code, and there's a simple way to place this in the editor, but the code is in control much more than before, and it will be probably work very nicely. Being a bit slow here. So I will just try like this. Climb high trigger equals. You just make an entity. I think this might work. Because I don't have a trigger in the new system yet. And I will get to that, but I want to do one thing at a time. The position of this one is the same as the entity's position. And the variant is trigger. Okay. What more? The variant is trigger. What does the trigger have? Trigger has a rect and a name and a target and a Okay. The rect you can probably steal from the collider. Wait. But we need to... We can do like this. Rect. Isn't there a pad rect? So we pad this one with 10 pixels on each side, so it becomes a bit bigger because we want it to kind of stick out like this. We want a collider around this. And the name, I think it's the trigger name, will be dot climb high volume. And then we add this one to the world. And hope for the best. What's it called then? It's called name, not trigger name. Apparently this one doesn't take a... Would you passed it by pointer? Okay, we can reset this. Use the chockey. I think it worked, just that the trigger is in the wrong place. It's down here. Wait, that worked. That worked. Now I could climb higher. So the thing is, currently you can't climb that high. So it worked. But, okay. I'm gonna try something here. I think my... No. I'm trying to understand why... Why is this one rendered over here? But it seems like it's working. But I have other triggers here which control the camera, and they seem to be rendering in the correct place. Yeah, they do. They doodly do. So why is this trigger here, which might be hard to see, but there's a red box here. Why do I have triggers? I'm gonna pick something. Wait. Draw world. La. Why is triggers red? Let's make it red green. Let's make triggers green. Fortunately, no, that was colliders. I'm not colorblind, fortunately, and this is just my debug stuff, so it doesn't affect anyone else. But if you are making a game, it's a nice idea to think about colorblind people, because there's quite a bunch of them, just when you're choosing your colors, to make sure there is even one thing I like doing. I want to test something here. So I have a hotkey in Windows that turns whole Windows black and white. I have no idea if this is done in Windows after the OBS sees it or not. So now I'm just looking at my stream. I see now it went to grayscale on the stream. That's cool. So sometimes so this is Control Windows C. You can press. You might have to enable it in the accessibility settings, but then there's different options. So one of the options is to turn it into like this red-green colorblind. I currently have it in full grayscale, which is the most, like, if your color values look good in this case, then it usually means that most colorblind people with all the different variations will be able to make it out, because you have good value differences in the color, even though there is even though there's no color, you see the value of the grayscale standing out properly. And that's usually what happens when colorblind people, when two colors blend together, it's that you lose the color vision, and then actually the only thing that kept those two colors apart was the difference in color. But they will actually, if it removes desaturated color, you see that they will actually sort of the same value, so they just become almost the same. So it's quite handy to do that. It's also quite fun to run your whole Windows in grayscale mode for a while, and then when you pop out of it, everything looks extremely oversaturated. Like even now, after just having that on for a little bit of time, I'm like, oh, everything's so colorful. Even like Windows, I'm like, oh, all these icons, very fancy. Okay, but now I'm wondering what the hell is. Okay, I was not gonna have. I was gonna have this one red, but I was gonna have my triggers be green instead. Or maybe yellow is better. Yeah. So there was green.rgb, and I was like green.yellow. This takes out the RGB color, and then it sets the alpha to 50. At least this is more separated out now. That's good. Okay, now I wonder, why are you there? Well, this one is correct. Here's something I want to try. If I go up here, and then I stand up here, and I touch this one. Yeah. Okay, so these colliders are correct. Hello again. Congrats on your mother being so nice. I mean, it's Friday after all. Can stay up a bit longer. I think we're in the same. I'm in Sweden, so if you're French, then we're in the same time zone. It's midnight now. Maybe you're 1 now. I don't know. It's probably around there. What am I doing? Trigger. Here it is. It just draws the trigger. How can... Wait a minute, I think I know why. Use item handler, rock wall item handler. Oh, yeah, I was in the middle of renaming these. And then I got sidetracked. Talked about colorblind things. Sometimes it's easier to just rewrite everything. Use item handler default. Rather than you can move stuff around, just copy and paste. Rather than just copy and paste around, you can just select and write. Alright. Use item handler rock wall. I think I know what's going on here. The colliders do not have an origin. So when I just use the collider straight off here, then this is annoying. Game create. You know what I'm gonna do now? Entity from it. I'm gonna rename this function. What's it called? No, what's it? This is supposed to be like. Oh yeah, this is the one I wanted. This one is supposed to be called create entity from entity kind. Replace in across free files. Thank you. Let's see here. So here I have the texture. Yeah. How annoying. I think I know what I can do. Oh, now I know how I get to why I get. It's not Sublime, so it's my fault. I was complaining that sometimes I get two game.odin in the same one. It's because I like splitting into two panes, like two columns like this, and then sometimes I merge them again into one, and then I have both. So it's just it should be like that, but you know. Can I have a function to make like rect from? Okay, do I have like size? Rect size. No, rect from size. Okay. So I have this thing. Position from rect from size. Do I have a size from rect? So I know what's the problem here is now. So this function just returns the size of a rectangle. Blah de blah. Ugh. So this one should not have the sort of offset, I think. Or should it? Oh, I'm so confused. Rect from size. Rect size. What's wrong with these things? If I do that, got very sad. There's a missing parentheses. Rect from size. Rect. So size from rect. So this essentially just removes the position of a rect. So it just has the size. I don't know. I'm gonna be tired. I'm just doing very strange things now. It's still in the same place. Aha. Oh yeah, this is how it is. For that's all fine. need to do this. Rect pos is pos from a rectangle e.collider. So this will get the position. I'm just doing remember how I said earlier that that's even worse. I said earlier that it's easy to go down the wrong path and sort of sometimes start putting things on top of something, and like you're not doing the correct solution early enough in the code. Yeah, now that one is at the correct place. Why could I walk from underneath that one? I don't know. Yeah, I said before that sometimes you start working on the sort of wrong solution, and you keep putting sort of band-aids over it. I feel like this stuff here, something like that. I want the size of the collider for my trigger, but my trigger gets a weird offset. But it still looks wrong, doesn't it? Aha. Yes, it does, because yeah, it also doesn't get the offset that I put here. Blah, blah. Yeah, I'm doing silly stuff now. It's a weird thing you can do in Odin. You can like take -10 on a vector and then it puts -10 on both X and Y. I've never done that. I've always only done it by mistake. And it's like moves it in 2 directions. I don't know why I don't think it should be like that, but yeah, that works. The weird thing about this is that before I could climb this thing even though I didn't seem to be inside the collider, which was weird to me. It doesn't work if I put it. No, wait, they haven't used it yet. Yeah, this doesn't work. I think that the debug output maybe isn't completely the same as the code that checks the collider positions. Anyways, now it's in the correct position and I can climb up. Okay, that's all nice. So now I've recreated exactly the same stuff that I had before. Before I had like in the editor, you can go back to the beginning of this replay later. In the editor I had like in the editor I had like you put a little interaction thingy, and then that one enabled a trigger that you could be inside, and then it also enabled the graphics things. Now it's just like, oh, it adds to the one renderable and then it spawn a trigger, and I don't even think the trigger should be like this in the end, but I'm still using the old system. So yeah. So I think this is, for me that likes doing things in code, is both simpler and also quicker to set up, and I have high hopes for doing more things like this, that I can get more interesting game behavior from having these kind of code item handler thingies. But yeah, I've sort of done what I set out in this stream, I think. I will look at this a bit, but I'm a bit tired now, so I'm probably gonna end the stream now. But it's thank you for everyone who watched, and yeah, someone says that the game looks really good in the chat. It's our friend with the GHJHEY HJK. I like your name. It's impossible to say. Says that the game looks really good. Thank you. Yeah, but I'm gonna end the stream here because this is a good point, and because I got what I wanted to work, and I'm sure I will be able to do lots more interesting things here now. So thank you everyone for watching, and have a nice weekend and stuff. Bye bye.